Hello everybody, welcome back to Screen Stars, welcome to another top 10 list. And this top 10 list was voted by you guys on YouTube. I put up a poll to see which top 10 list you would like to see next. And this was the clear winner. My top 10 favourite action films from the 1980s. An incredible decade for everything really. Any film that you want to mention, horror, sci-fi, action, comedy. There was some absolutely outstanding films in the 1980s. It's my favourite decade if I had to choose one in regards to movies. And as usual, this list has proven to be quite challenging to put together my favourite top 10 action films. Most of them you will see fit neatly into other categories as well, but they are also, you would look at them and class them as action movies. So there are some that would fit in sci-fi, there are some that would fit in adventure, etc., etc. But you will see, I think, as the list goes on, that all of these would be considered action classics too. So I hope you enjoy the list. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. As usual, there are some honourable mentions that I want to talk about, and three in particular. The first one is Above the Law, or as I used to know it, Nico. In the UK it was called Nico for many years, not Above the Law. And this was Steven Seagal's very, very first film. And it was a great film. Some would consider arguably still his best film. I'm not sure I'd go along with that, but it was definitely an absolute classic action film and a really good start to his career. The next one is Bloodsport. The film, again, arguably that really put Van Damme on the map. It's a really fantastic martial arts film, and it's a really good action film. And it was a great start for him too in his career. And Big Trouble in Little China just didn't quite make the list. I was debating this one for quite a long time. Some might not even consider it an action film. Some might consider it, a comedy or whatever. But I think there's plenty of action in this one, and it's an absolute classic. Coming in at number 10 on the list is Roadhouse. This was released in 1989, stars Patrick Swayze, and it's just an absolute classic. It's a film I have reviewed on the channel. I did a classic film review for it a couple of years ago, probably. And it's just a wonderful film. It's a great action film. And many years ago, I used to work as a doorman myself in the 90s. And this was a film that many doormen used to talk about quite a lot. It was a lot of fun to watch. Great action sequences, some great martial arts sequences, some brilliant fighting sequences, and it's just a real 80s classic. Certainly a movie of its time, but really entertaining still. Coming in at number 9 on the list is Aliens. Released in 1986, was a box office hit, and this is one of those that I mentioned that fits comfortably into other categories as well, horror and sci-fi. But at the very core of this, James Cameron clearly wanted to turn it into like an action film, use all that had come before him so brilliantly by Ridley Scott, and turn the second film into an absolute action classic. And he certainly did that, but it also remains true to its science fiction roots and true to its horror roots as well. It is scary at the same time as being completely action-packed with some really memorable characters. An absolute brilliant film. Coming in at number 8, First Blood, released in 1982. Stallone had another hit on his hands with this one. He's obviously continued the franchise many, many times, but I don't think there's many people out there would argue that First Blood is still the best Rambo film. It was one of those films that I remember being at school that everyone used to talk about all the time. Have you seen First Blood? Have you seen First Blood? And then when you get around to watching it, it was just brilliant. The bit in the wood where he's, taking out the, sheriff's department and things like that, and then the manhunt that followed. Just a really great action film, and it is still stood the test of time today. Coming in at number 7, Raiders of the Lost Ark. What can you say about this film, really? It's timeless because of the time period it's set in. You can watch it anytime. It never feels dated. An iconic hero in regards to Indiana Jones. Action that you'd never seen before in a film. And it was just, I remember going to the cinema to see this and just being absolutely amazed at what I was seeing. The sequence with the truck, when it goes through the window and then he's dragged underneath the truck. So many great action moments in this film, and it's just an absolute classic from the 80s, really. Coming in at number 6, Lethal Weapon. I am a huge fan of the Lethal Weapon franchise. I love them all, to a large degree, equally, even though, there are some obviously better than others. But I really love this original Lethal Weapon. It was a great introduction to these characters, a fantastic action film, lightning in a bottle chemistry between Danny Glover and Mel Gibson, and Richard Donner, who was an absolute genius on the camera, and he recently passed away, as we know. It's just a wonderful film. All the Lethal Weapon films are absolutely wonderful and very, very watchable, but the first one is probably the most serious of the bunch, but it's fantastic. How could we forget Die Hard, released in 1988, another box office smash from the 80s. Again, you can see all these 80s classics here. They're very hard to put in order in a top 10 list because they're all just so brilliant. But this is the film that we all know put Bruce Willis on the map. Again, I do lament what's happened to him these days. His passion for the business has clearly gone. You watch him in films like this and you see that spark and that charisma just shine through on screen. He was such a joy, really, in movies like this, Bruce Willis. He was playing the everyman in these action movies, and I just absolutely love Die Hard. It's a timeless classic and really fantastic. Coming in at number 4, Commando. This was one of my go-to films when I was a kid, when I was growing up and had aspirations of being a bodybuilder. I'm a huge fan of Arnie. I had Commando posters up. I had all the Arnie films posters up on the wall, and I used to watch this film endlessly, Commando. It is so much fun to watch. Yes, it's completely unbelievable. Yes, it's way over the top, but I defy anyone to tell me that this film is not hugely entertaining. It's a crying shame we never got a sequel. Well, I think we all would have loved to have seen a Commando sequel with John Matrix returning. Wasn't to be, unfortunately, so we have to make do with this, and what a film it is. Coming in at number 3, Robocop. I just watched this a couple of days ago. Well, I was about halfway through and I turned the TV on and it was on. And it just reminded me again what a great film this is. And the effects at the time were just mind-blowing. I think what makes this film so good is the fact that it's got this wonderfully over-the-top graphic violence, and it's got a real sense of humour, this film. It's got its tongue firmly stuck in its cheek for the most part in regards to the advertisements and the news stories that you see and everything, but at the very core it's ultra-violent with incredible effects. Coming at number 2, the second Arnold Schwarzenegger film on this list, The Terminator. Again, many would argue probably the best in the series. I think that's hard to debate. I think the second one is very much on par with this one. But I think what makes this one great is it's the only one, really, where we've had Arnie as the villain, as the Terminator. And we get this, at the very core of it, the great love story between Sarah Connor and Kyle Reese. And then we get this machine just endlessly trying to search for Sarah Connor and kill her. We'd never seen anything like it on screen before. Some of the effects have dated a little poorly, but it is still really, really good. And coming in at number 1, I think I did a top 10 list of my favourite sci-fi films from the 80s, and I think this made number 1 as well of that. See what I mean? This sits comfortably in a couple of different categories. But at the very core of it, it's an action film. And well, what an action film it is. I was obsessed with this film when I was younger. I can't tell you how many times I've watched it. This is the film I've probably watched in more than any other film in my life, Predator. It's just a brilliant, brilliant story. Very, very simply told, but with brilliant characters in it. And at the very core of it, a really masculine Schwarzenegger that essentially gets demasculinized by this alien creature and gets knocked down a peg or two. And he's got to think on his feet and use his survival skills to try and get the upper hand. It's an absolutely fantastic film. and that's why it's my number one, basically. I could go on talking all day about Predator, but I won't. I think you know, guys, how good the film is. So there you go, guys. That is my top 10 favourite action films from the 1980s. I think you will agree there are some absolute belters on that list. Some complete classics, undoubtedly. And a very, very hard list to put in any kind of order. Because there's just so many great films on there. I would love to know in the comments if there's any action films from the 80s that you think should have made the list, or if you want to give me your top 10 list in the comments, or even do your own top 10 list on your channel. I will be really, really interested in checking that out as well. So thanks for watching, everybody. I will probably do some more voting on the channel, on YouTube. Keep your eye open for that, for more top 10 lists, more franchise reviews, things like that. But as always, guys, thank you very much for your support. I will be back with plenty more reviews and content on the channel very, very soon.